Friends, Romans, AuthorTubers. I have not actually addressed this platform of AuthorTube or YouTube in general, but after watching a couple of videos recently, one from Kate Kavanaugh, the other from Novel T, which was a group discussion on the platform, and some of the hate involved, especially when you're putting yourself out to the public and becoming a bit more popular, and I had some things that I wanted to add to that discussion. That's the subject for this episode of The Story Detective. Let's talk. If you like this video, if you find some good information here, remember to like and subscribe. And if you don't like it, go ahead and give it a thumbs down. But leave your argument down below because I'd like to know why. Let's set the stage with the hate factor. Especially as you start growing your channel, growing your platform. That's when your peers, your potential fans, humanity in general is going to start taking shots at you. I don't know why that is, especially among creators, because we're all striving for essentially the same thing. With creators, it's almost a catch-22 because we'll get out there and say, okay, I want to do whatever I want to do. I should be allowed to create my way and be respected for it. But I'm not going to pull the trigger on your book because your book is just bad. Even if it's bad, shouldn't that creator be allowed to do whatever they want and create the way they do and find themselves through their own process? It's sort of messy. All creators are used to the idea of being put down because I think it starts from the onset. You want to write your book, you want to be creative in some aspect, and the first thing you get from your friends, your family is, you shouldn't do this. They'll try to discourage you from the moment you say, this is what I want to do, I'm going to devote my life to this. No. Usually the answer is, you're not going to make money. You're not going to be able to make a living. Secondly, if you do make any money at all, you're not going to make what's considered good money. Looking back at my family, my parents, my grandparents, if you knew people that were a little bit older that have been around watching TV, that have been around since the 1950s, it became the most important invention on the planet. You can't get them away from their favorite TV shows, soap operas. Those TV shows and those programs didn't appear on their screen by magic. They take it for granted that they're there without thinking that there's literally hundreds of creative people behind those projects making them happen. But you know what I say to those people? Cancel their cable subscriptions, take away their TVs. You'll see how quickly that the creative world can be very important to them. Then we start getting out there in the real world and we think we're going to be among our fellows. It's going to be different. And then it's not. It's never a perfect world. Social media. As a platform, those stories that we're told, we need to be on there ASAP. We need to be getting our stuff out there. If we want to sell our books, we need to start building a community now. But here's what I see, and here's something to consider. Every platform, whether it's YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, they all have a certain criteria to that platform. Now, what I see YouTubers doing is the same thing that every other platform does, whether they realize it or not. They look at what's popular, what's getting views, and they emulate those things because they think that's what's required on the platform. And the danger there is you're catering to the platform. When you do that, you're preaching to the choir. You want to be popular on that platform amongst your peers there. And it's great to have that social support, but you want to expand beyond the platform and reach readers that aren't normally watching your video. Because if you're trying to sell your books to writers, or you're trying to sell your book to the platform and be popular there, it's a way to get started, and we all get started that way. And then we kind of have to branch out beyond that. And social media, even if you have various platforms, the people from Twitter won't necessarily follow you to YouTube and vice versa. Each platform you'll literally have a handful of people, and that handful of people will subscribe to your channel, maybe follow you to the next platform. But when you start selling your book, that handful of loyal people from each platform is going to amount to how many book sales. It's not the ultimate goal. Look at finding your own voice. I approached the idea of a video as a different storytelling venue. It's a way to do various things and get yourself out there, but you're also finding your own voice in a sea of very similar voices who are all saying pretty much the same thing. And let's talk about YouTube specifically, since that's where we all are currently. They are basically niches, and YouTube as a niche platform unto itself becomes a platform for niches within niches. Now, as writers, or as a writer, when I look up fiction writing, I find like Stephen King, Neil Gaiman, the popular authors that are big names pop up. If I look up AuthorTube, for example, what I find is mainly female YA and fantasy authors, so it has quickly become a niche unto itself. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that as a rule. The downside of algorithms is they feed themselves. They don't necessarily nourish us. And does that inhibit people from stemming out and doing something from the heart of their own creativity and their own originality? So the problem with those algorithms and directing everybody into those tighter and tighter boxes, when we break it down to writers and AuthorTube, those circles have closed in so tightly around that genre. Usually there are little pockets of different algorithmic genres within YouTube, but there's just either not enough authors doing different things. It's not the people's fault or even the responsibility of those writers doing it. I think for the platform itself, we need to break out a little bit. We need to encourage or help one another. Otherwise, it's not going to be conducive to forming things from the creator's individuality. If they break out of such a tight conformed pocket, is that going to inhibit you in the future from going to do something else? Or are those algorithms just going to exclude you because you're not conforming to what they've drawn the box around? So how do you find your own voice on this platform? I've watched a lot of people that sell services and teach people on how to be a successful YouTuber. And what the majority of them say is that 99% of the people who are doing YouTube are doing it wrong, which says something about what's popular and what's not popular and how that's going to help you as a writer. If that's true, then again, finding our own voice and our own unique territory here is even more important. One time I had a writer tell me, in terms of interviewing and being on TV, if you actually could get those types of interviews, thinking in terms of an interview, what are the questions you expect your future readers, publishers, and then answer those questions. It's about marketing yourself. So you want to give the answers to the questions you're not asked. Now, one of the things that was mentioned in the novelty video, they said, don't tell your peers about writing, and that would be a very true statement. You don't want to tell writers what they already know. At the same time, there's newcomers who are probably looking at YouTube to say, okay, I don't know how to write. Basics are important for some people, and YouTube is generally very popular for the how-to stuff. So if you're talking how-to, how do you do that and not put down your fellow writers? I think writers and creative people as a rule like to read about other writers' process, their adventures in writing, and they have their own little trials and tribulations. I can relate to that, and I like to read those books. Their process may give me something interesting to try, something that I don't already know, and that's going to add to the fun of creating, because we wonder what it's like to slip into these writers' shoes. Things like that. Now, we want to understand those experiences. Those experiences kind of broaden us. They give us a picture that if this person can do it and they're popular and they went through all these steps too, then maybe I'm on the right track. I think it's about encouraging one another. I have a friend who's into internet marketing who says I should be looking at what I put out there on my social media as finding my ideal client. If I know the type of person and I've thought about it and I've formed it in my head who that person is, that's the ideal person that I want to sell my book to, that I want to watch my videos, then everything is going to be aimed at that ideal. Think about the more popular YouTubers. Not so much again that we want to emulate them. Most of them aren't writers, and yet they're showing us little things that we connect with their lives. They're not showing us their entire lives. They're giving us little curated pieces of it. But they're also going out and having a little adventure. It's a little story, because it's always about story. We are our own story. We are the story we're presenting here. And when people invest in us, then we put our product out there, or maybe some of us already have product out there. When people buy that product, it's investing in a little tactile piece of us, the people whose lives and whose stories they've already invested in. And that essentially is what this platform is all about. I think in terms of surviving the platform, all the statistics, all the do's and don'ts, all the problem stories and success stories combined, you really have to love what you do. It's like writing itself. Are you writing because you think you're going to become the next mega popular author? Or are you doing it because it's feeding you creatively? Are you getting something out of it that you couldn't live without? And if that's true, then you'll keep on writing. I think if you enjoy making videos, you'll continue to do that because you enjoy it. And I think as a creative person, that's why I got into doing it. I enjoy making the videos. I didn't try to conform to anything. And I thought if I start trying to be outrageous or do what's popular, I'm not going to be happy myself. We do it for ourselves. We do it to make ourselves happy. And we continue in the vein because it is another storytelling medium. We enjoy doing it. If we're doing it because we think we have to do it to sell books or we have to be popular on YouTube, I think we've already failed. Those people that do leave negative responses, and this is an unfortunate part when you start getting popular at anything, when you're on the cusp of trending on any level, people are going to start taking their pot shots. And they will be relatively few, or hopefully relatively few compared to the number of good responses. But when you address them, then those people think, okay, I got a reaction, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to fuel that fire, and then that fire just attracts more of the same. The people that have the negative responses, they are kind of like the dust that blows into your channel, and it blows into your popularity. If you are fortunate enough to become a mega popular author like Stephen King, think of the comments that he got in his book. He had people telling him he was going to burn in hell for writing horror, that he was a cruel SOB for having one of his villains kick a dog, which, as he pointed out, there was no dog involved. It was words on a page, and he had never mistreated one of his animals, but people take it all personally, and people write things into almost anything we do. So you have to let, as the dust blows in, the negative wind, you let it blow right back out. Don't feed it, don't fuel it, because that only it fans the flames and it grows. And unless you're one of the people that are going to make your career standing on that soapbox and shouting about everything negative and getting those controversial people coming in constantly, if that's the type of business and that's the type of platform you want to create, then great. Otherwise, don't be offended by it. Don't address it. Just let the winds keep blowing, and they'll blow to somebody else and someone who gives them a reaction to whatever things they're saying. it can be hurtful when it happens. You know, it's still response to your channel, and all responses and all reactions to a writer are good. The strong emotional love, the strong emotional hate, there's still a strong reaction. And if a writer says or does something that gets a strong emotional reaction, then it's a win. But you don't get down in the mud and fight it out with these people, because then we're back to the messy. And I think for creators, we just need to take a step back from that and say, okay, does that change who I am? Does it change what I'm doing? Because it shouldn't. So if you haven't subscribed already, it's right down there, that little button. Remember to click it on your way out. And thanks. I will see you next time on The Story Detective.